Righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. But draw near hither, ye sons of the sorceress, the seed of the adulterer and the whore.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Isaiah, chapter 57. And let's begin. The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He shall enter into peace. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. But draw near hither, ye sons of the sorceress, the seed of the adulterer and the whore. Against whom do ye sport yourselves? Against whom make ye a wide mouth and draw out the tongue? Are not ye children of transgression, a seed of falsehood? Inflaming yourselves with idols under every green tree, slaying the children in the valleys under the cliffs of the rocks? Among the smooth stones of the stream is thy portion. They are thy lot. Even to them hast thou poured out a drink offering. Thou hast offered a meat offering. Should I receive comfort in these? Upon a lofty and high mountain hast thou set thy bed. Even thither wentest thou up to offer sacrifice. Behind the doors also and the posts hast thou set up thy remembrance. For thou hast discovered thyself to another than me, and art gone up. Thou hast enlarged thy bed, and made thee a covenant with them. Thou lovest their bed where thou sawest it. And thou wentest to the king with ointment, and didst increase thy perfumes, and didst send thy messengers far off, and didst debase thyself even unto hell. Thou art wearied in the greatness of thy way, yet saidst thou not, there is no hope. Thou hast found the life of thine hand, therefore thou wast not grieved. And of whom hast thou been afraid or feared, that thou hast lied, and hast not remembered me, nor laid it to thy heart? Have not I held my peace even of old, and thou fearest me not? I will declare thy righteousness, and thy works, for they shall not profit thee. When thou criest, let thy companies deliver thee. But the wind shall carry them all away, vanity shall take them. But he that putteth his trust in me shall possess the land, and shall inherit my holy mountain, and shall say, cast ye up, prepare the way, take up the stumbling block out of the way of my people. For thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place, with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. For I will not contend forever, neither will I always be wroth, for the spirits should fail before me, and the souls which I have made. For the iniquity of his covetousness was I wroth, and smote him. I hid me, and was wroth, and he went on frowardly in the way of his heart. I have seen his ways, and will heal him. I will lead him also, and restore comforts to him and to his mourners. I create the fruit of the lips. Peace. Peace to him that is far off, and to him that is near, saith the Lord, and I will heal him. But the wicked are like the troubled sea, when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. So, what is it? Oh, that thou wouldest rend the heavens is next? Or wait, 50? Or is that 59? Or cry aloud. Oh. That's a good one. Show my people their transgression and my people their sin. You know, it's interesting in that chapter. It's like it opens up, cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet. Show my people their transgressions and ask in the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways. As the nation that did righteousness and forsook not the ordinance of their God. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching to God. I just want to go right to that point. Because it sort of explains a lot of things. But we'll talk about it's more about fasting in the particular. But we already know a lot of the facts on the ground. Really, there's nothing new revealed there. The fact is that there is. Well, let's just go through it. The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. Initially, remember I talked about the status of the watchman? Now this verse here sort of is not exactly clear where it should go precisely. I mean, it goes right there, but I mean, is it more associated with the previous part? Or is it more associated to this? In some ways, I see some connection here because of the fact the evil to come is, in my mind, referring back to the evil implied when you have watchmen that are blind, ignorant, dumb dogs, like we talked about yesterday. When you have watchmen that are sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber, more interested in feeding themselves than in doing their job. Let me see. That's not too bad. Whatever. I can always just reset the camera. It's not a big deal. It's like, in fact, let's just do that. Do. So anyways, instead of doing their job, because I can still continue this. So they, all right. I guess it's hard to continue and reset the camera. That's better. Okay. Just milliseconds. Right. Where's my text? There we go. All right. But when you have a state like that where you have watchmen that are just absolutely awful, evil is going to come because no one's watching, you know what I mean? Because it's implied. And that's just a sort of decadence that precedes disaster. You know what I mean? Why are they so, they're so decadent because they think no evil can come upon us. That so often is the way things are right before evil comes upon people. You know, Belteshazzar was feasting out of the vessels of the house of the Lord. You know what I mean? And it's funny, it's funny because the wicked kind of do that. They double down on their evil. When you let them have their way, they, you know what I mean? Like, you let, they say you give them an inch, they take a mile. That's how the wicked are. It's not always wicked, but it is a sort of an aggressive thing. And wickedness is certainly like that. I mean, maybe a good person might take a mile when given an inch, for a good cause. Meaning like you could push someone to do good. I know some well-meaning pushy people, but also wickedness is also pushy. It tries to increase itself. It does make me think of our modern political leaders and the way they double down. When things are bad, they say, well, you should just get behind and feeding ourselves we're not really watching what's going on or taking care of you, the country, or watching out for it. No. And here's a very stark reality. It's like sometimes, this passage here is not talking about the rapture. It's talking about people dying. The way that, not only that, they perish in the sense of out of the land. You know what I mean? Meaning sometimes they get up and leave. Sometimes, they seem to, where have all the righteous men gone? And where have they gone? Why do they seem to die out? And the next generation is not a righteous generation. I don't think, because it's like, I remember looking at a heading. Is in this one or in the, maybe, I think it's actually in the, on Bible Hub. They have these little chapter headings for every, you can't see it there. But it says, like, the chapter heading for these first two verses, it says, the blessed death of the righteous. Which is weird. And I get it, because it is speaking, when it says resting in their beds, the metaphor is death. Just as Jesus spoke of death as a sleep, because, again, God is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. And those that shall live again in resurrection, he does not regard as dead. So he uses the analogy of sleep, because they will rise again. In God, they are already walking with him in his kingdom. As far as that goes. And people get weird about time and stuff. Like, right now? No, they're in God's kingdom. Not now. They're not here now, in this time, in this place. They're gone. Well, they're here, actually, but they're dead. They're not, but they're not over there. They are there. Just like God is there, waiting for us in his kingdom in the future. I'll be there too. You know what I mean? But so but there is a fulfillment that has to come. The resting in the beds. No, they rest in their beds, implying they shall rise again. And Isaiah is the most of all the Old Testament books. There's none that talks more about the resurrection, as far as I'm aware. As far as in my recollection, more so than Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is mostly just completely about, writing a Jeremiad is a way they refer to someone writing a book that's about how everything's terrible and how the whole system's going to collapse. Like someone who would write a book about the economic collapse of the United States or something like that. That might be a Jeremiad. Just telling society off about how awful it truly is. And so, it doesn't have this, it's not quite as redemptive as Isaiah, and not as optimistic either in some, because of the times he lived in. Because the book has a purpose. There's a time for every purpose under heaven, And so, it's not that the righteous, it's not that necessarily, there's a lot of ways you could look at this. Well, like I said, and I've said this many times, we all will, at the end of our life, meet. All our lives end, and we have the judgment. The end times are upon all of us. As far as we're concerned as individuals, we have the end of time to deal with, and we want to, I've said this before, I think, in studies, but I certainly have said it in private. When I was young. It was like, I can't wait for the end times. Can't wait for the end times. Just want to live. I want to see the Antichrist and stand against him and fight against all the evils that I see in the book of Revelation. Right? And as I grew up and I had children and stuff, I realized, and I considered also the scriptures. There was a lot of scriptures about the end times, and some of them are very explicit in saying like, hey, it's not a good time to be alive. It's right. It's hard. It's a hard thing that's going to go on. And the men and women who face it in Christ, in the church, will face the greatest challenge, and also and have the greatest victory. And that's why you want to do it, right? You want to be part of the great victory. That's what attracts me to it, But it's also a great trial of affliction. I don't think a trial in a sense of like I'm worried about how I would come out. It's exceedingly, it could lead to exceedingly high amounts of pain. I mean, who knows? Because you just, fortunately, I think that it seems to indicate in the book of Revelation we will have some protection until the time comes to kill us. But the enemies of God will put the servants of God to gruesome deaths if they're allowed. They do, okay? They already do. And so, how much more so in that time, Certainly, you look at the book of Revelation, there's a lot of saints with their heads cut off, So, keep that in mind. So, me personally, I would like to live out my days in peace. I discovered that at some point. I'm like, no, I think I'd rather live out my days in peace. And now seeing the pandemic, I'm like, I know that in the face of it, I'm going to stand up because I have to. I now see what's inside of me, what I only thought maybe, it's like, would I resist the mark of the beast? I'm like, I think so, yeah. If I ran with the footmen and I think I overtook them a bit. And they have not wearied me. But it's like the idea that like, okay, now let's try, you're going to try now running with horses. I'm not so sure about that. But it's kind of like walking on the water. I'm pretty sure I can't do that either. But Peter was able to do it with God's power. So with God's power, I will outrace horses. That's the mentality. But still, I consider the Lord Jesus, when facing crucifixion, he prayed, if there be another way. So I'm not ashamed to say it's like, I'm not anxious to go into any kind of tribulation like that, But I sincerely believe that if I'm alive in those days, there's no rapture that's going to take you out of it. The only escape is death. And for the righteous, it is an escape. If we die and the land becomes more corrupt, we die off, it's only because God is bringing evil, man. If the righteous seem to fade and all of a sudden, our country, our poor country, it's turning evil, you know what? The righteous are taken away from the evil that's coming, because evil is coming. And the watchmen are asleep and drunk and all those other things we discussed. And so there'll be no one ready for it. We may be ready for it, but we're not in a position to make the world won't be ready for it. That's the thing. If someone down in the city is ready for the attack, like, I'm ready, I got my home all secure, it won't stop the attack if the watchmen are asleep. If the watchmen are blind and can't watch, you can be all ready, but the attack's still coming. There's no actual defense other than the last. Each one. So righteous and merciful men, as they fade out from the picture, it's like, where have all the righteous men gone? As they disappear, it's sort of a sign that evil is coming. That's what you really need to lay to heart. The righteous perish. It's like, the righteous perisheth. No one lays it to heart. Where have all the righteous men? The merciful men where are all the merciful men? They're going away because evil is coming. They're dying off. They enter into peace. They rest in their beds. They enter into the peace of God. Not just the peace of the grave, but they, in their uprightness, like it says, their works do follow them. Every man must give account of the things he does in the flesh, whether they be good or evil. And thank God for the blood of Christ, so that I can stand before him having nothing on but the righteousness of Christ. You know, having been obedient to him. And I don't have to bear my iniquity. But every man will bear his iniquity if they do not know the Lord. But draw near hither, ye sons of the sorceress, the seed of the adulterer and the whore. So now he's going to contrast the upright, the merciful, the righteous men with the sons of the sorceress. Now we got to look at the sorceress. Let's see what that word is in Hebrew. Greek. All right, wait a second, Paul. First, you got to do the thing right. You got to the worst engineer in streaming. All right. Maybe I just don't know how to use my software right. There's probably more expensive. This is free, you know. Let's see. Feed the children. Where is... There we go. All right. Sorry. 3. All right. Well, this is interesting. Ye sons. Son. I can't. It's tiny print. Anan. To practice soothsaying. A primitive virtue cover used only in the denominatives. Anan. To cloud over. Figuratively, to act covertly, that is, to practice magic. It's like some practicer of secret arts. Fine, sorceress. The secret evil arts of whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't, in a sense, it doesn't matter. Because it's a symbol. You know what I mean? The sorceress symbolizes the seductiveness of evil. You know what I mean? And that's quite clear. She's hiding something. You know, the idea that there's a secretness about the word sorceress. Practicer of secret arts. Knower of secrets. There are all kinds of secrets in the world. You know, when I grew up, they told me, you know, there's a secret. Here, you know, here are these magazines. Look at the secret places hidden from view. You know, infecting the minds of children. And, yeah. Sons of the sorceress, seed of the adulterer and the whore. I wonder if that means, you know, an adulterer with a whore making a child. You know what I mean? But whatever. Or just the seed of an adulterer. I don't know if that word adulterer is male or female. Sometimes it's gendered in the language. I could find out. Let's see. Let's find out. I mean, if it's explicitly masculine or feminine, then it bears on the interpretation. I mean, if it's not, I could give both interpretations. Let's see if we have any explicit male or female on adulterer. To commit a na'af. And the way we'd find that out, I believe, is through that lexicon part. Adulterer, so you can say adulteress, adulteresses. Now, there's a masculine singular. And let's see. Literally by women. Figurative of idolatrous worship. Feminine singular, masculine plural. Where is the... Feminine plural participle. Well, I don't know what that means. Well, it says here, peel. See, I don't know this stuff. This is beyond my understanding. Peel, perfect 3, feminine singular. Jeremiah 3:8. There's a masculine there in Jeremiah 23:37, twice in the same verse. Imperfect masculine plural, feminine plural, and then participle. So I guess this is neither male nor female then. So it could be either or, if that's the case, because it seems to be, unless it's what comes after. No, the verse comes after. Even then it would be plural. Adulterers, Jeremiah. So that's how you can figure that out. Now, see, a lot of these are definitely feminine, like Jeremiah 3:8. When it's translated, is it translated specifically adulterous? Oh, it's the Green's Interlinear. Adultery. Yeah, I put her away, Israel blacksliding when she'd committed adultery. Sure. Okay. Interesting. So here there is neither male nor female. So there's no specificity. We don't know. As far as if it's three female, if we're looking at all female cast of villains here, or if we're looking at whatever. Okay. But again, the whole thing is the same thing. It's like they've gone astray from God's path. They have, looked to other gods. That's the idea of adultery and whoredom. They under every green tree, is the way it was described in the Old Testament in many places, right? So, again, these are the offspring. Now, again, spiritually, you have to think spiritually. It's not necessarily literally. He's speaking of the children of Israel. Because within his people, Israel, Jacob, that's where you get this duality. It's like he wants to redeem Jacob, but Jacob has all these idolaters in there. So there's this necessity of removing the righteous, then punishing the wicked, then restoring Jacob to his state. Because he's dealing with a nation, right? But this eventually gets extrapolated to the whole world. So the same phenomenon ultimately comes about when the gospel is preached to the whole world, and the Antichrist comes in his, because I do take this thing as very much an analogy for the Antichrist in many ways, because it is the ultimate betrayal. The ultimate betrayal, the ultimate whore is the whore of Revelation. I mean, she's in the apocalypse. The apocalyptic whore is like the final culmination. And not that the other symbols don't have very potent meaning in their context, but they all kind of point to that final one. And the sons, Mercy says, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. Another one where it says, her sons and stuff. It talks about her having children. The children are the people that really make her up. They're like her disciples, even those who are the sons in that sense of the whore are kind of like the ones who promote it, and who influence people in it. I as far as I see it as a potent symbol. She's not just, because the whore is like the people who go astray, but she has sons. Her beloved sons. It's like if you look at a church as like a woman. And who's her beloved son? It's the pastor, right? He's the beloved son. And so when the whore, she has her beloved sons, which are like her pastors and her teachers and her politicians. It says, against whom do you sport yourselves? Against whom do you make a wide mouth and draw out the tongue? Are you not children of transgression, a seed of falsehood? And they sport themselves. What's that word sport mean? Usually, I think it's translated actually pretty well usually. Let's say sport. It means like to play, Because the word means, it's interesting, the word means to be soft, to be, I guess I'm doing a lot of words today, huh? To be soft, dainty, delicate. That to play means not to do something for real. So like if we play fight, it's soft, right? I'm not hitting you hard. We're wrestling, if we're play wrestling, I'm thinking of the kids, but basic, or if you're being romantic, it's soft, it's delicate, dainty, delicateness, delight, delighted, just, take delight. That's the American Standard. What about the King James, how they translate it? Delicateness, have delight, sport self. It means to sort of take delight in that way. I mean, when I say, I'm going to say play, but sport also means play. I guess I'm using the word sport. I'm going with the English sport. I'm trying to think of what they were thinking of when they translated it sport, because sport usually means like play. But it does also mean that, like when they talk about, in the King James translation, I think they mentioned Abraham sporting with Sarah at some point, and that's how they knew. Delicate, dainty. It does have a slight implication of intimacy. Anyways, okay, so. But against whom do you sport yourselves? It's against whom. I want to check out my translation on that. Because I always feel like I have a very strong sense of what this means. Let's see. Against whom? Well, the way it's formed there, I want to look at it. Go back to this real quick. Participle feminine. Oh, poop. I forgot to get that up there. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay. It is the third time. This is the only time it's used like this. With this part, which means against. To sport against. Yeah, I mean, to be dainty in opposition to. Sort of to make merry over. To make sport of. Okay, so they like the translation of the King James. It's like to take exquisite delight in a negative sense. You know what I mean? Usually it means something nice. You know what I mean? It usually means like we're going to have some fun together. But this means to have fun at another's expense. So at whose expense are you having fun? Would be an excellent way to translate that in English, actually. As far as thought for thought wise, not for word translation. But thought for thought, that would be pretty good. I'm not going to look at the NIV right now, but we could. It would be something like that, probably. Or that would be a good translation, I think. At whose expense are you having so much fun? At whose expense are you making your mouth wide and dry? Maybe sticking out there. I don't know what the exact, what is this? I'm not sure what that means. I wonder if they'd say stick out the tongue in the. Let's look at the NIV. Why not? Let's look at the thought for thought translation and see how they come down on it. Who are you mocking? At whom do you sneer and stick out your tongue? That's why I don't like the NIV. It loses all like the raw power. Yes. They somehow managed to make everything seem less. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of NIV as far as the feeling I get reading it. Not as far as their translation. It's not, like I said. As long as you understand what it is, that it is more of an interpretation than say the King James, which has more mistakes. To tell you the truth, the King James has more mistakes in it. But the New American, but as far as like meaning actual errors, the NIV, they do things on purpose that maybe you don't want them to do, but they're not mistakes in that sense. They may be the wrong thing to do and a mistake in that sense, but not like a oops, we translated it wrong. Like later on, scholars discover, oh, that's not right. Not like that. All right. You are children of transgression, a seed of falsehood. This goes to what I talked about in my teaching that is available on my website, oraclesofgod.org, which I always put up there. But it's like one of the first ones I did on the studies page. You go to the studies page, all the way down. It's number 3, the seed of the serpent, a 2-hour study, and it's important because there is doctrine. It's a spiritual doctrine. Ultimately, it's not a carnal seed, because as the Lord showed Peter, out of every nation, those who fear God and do righteousness, God honors that. That's what it says. Or what does it say? That He receiveth them, or something like that. So I have to look it up. I should get that right, shouldn't I? That's what I get for not memorizing things. Cornelius. I'm just going to look. Corn. I'm just look up corn. Corn. Yeah, 236. Since I know I wanted an axe. Cornelius, Acts 10. There we go. Acts 10, near the end of it, I believe. No, it's verse 35. But in every nation, he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. Like it says, Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of persons. That's verse 34. But in every nation, he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. That is what those that work righteousness are accepted with God, regardless of their nation. So there is no nation which in and of itself, because of the nature of who they are by their genetics and their seeds, that is all condemned. That doesn't exist. Even Arnold Murray and I assume other people who believe in the serpent seed don't even believe that, which negates the whole idea of a serpent seed. Because if there is a serpent seed, it is an abomination which must be destroyed, just like the giants as people believe in them. They believe them to be some the giants. They were the result of the offspring of the angels and such. That such were abominations that to be destroyed. And whether whether or not that's so is regardless, because such a thing would be an abomination. In the same vein, it would not be part of God's redemptive plan, I think, for, it's just not even in the Bible. So, it's just something people have to read into the Bible. So it's really not worth a lot of time. Though I gave it 2 hours, Seed of the Serpent. I thought I did a pretty decent job. And like I said, it's very compact. And it's an edited study, so you don't have to listen to me hem and haw and do anything like that. Okay. And so, children of transgression, a seed of falsehood, a false seed. And he says, I planted a vineyard, I did all these things, I expected grapes, but I got wild grapes. You put a seed in the ground, like I just said, he went out and planted wheat, but then he got tares. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? You expect fruit and you get nothing. A false seed. Children that transgress the covenant to which they had laid claim, or which they had some claim. Or just that transgress against the laws of heaven and of their conscience. Because we're all transgressors of our conscience. You don't even have to know about God's law. You transgress your conscience, you're a sinner. You're a violator of the law. Because your conscience is a law unto itself. And you will testify against yourself as to the nature of your deeds. Because it'll all be naked and open before God. There's no hiding. You cannot hide from him. They inflame themselves with idols under every green tree, slaying the children in the valleys, under the cliffs of the rocks. Now, I generally think of that as child sacrifice, but it almost may refer to abortion, like quite literally to abortion. Because of the reference to valleys and cliffs of the rocks, because oftentimes it wasn't so much abortion, but infanticide. Meaning unwanted children would be thrown to the just off of cliffs and rocks. That's a practice. Especially, a lot of times prostitutes don't want to keep babies and raise them, and so nor can they perhaps, and so they dispose of the child in such a way. But it does mention under every green tree, and usually it's upon every high hill. They would put an altar and often engage in this kind of sacrifice. It's hard to tell here which of the two it's referring to. If it's referring to merely... Because here's the thing. Abortion is a form of child sacrifice. And essentially, it is a form of sacrificing a child to gain prosperity. Because obviously, a lot of times, there was a Hollywood actress, I remember she was talking, and I forgot who this is, and some award, and she was talking about how she was so glad she got an abortion when she was a teenager because she couldn't have accomplished all the things she did. And by sacrificing the child instead of her career, she got the career. She could have sacrificed the career to bring a life into the world, but that was not as important to her as her own life, and that's a decision people make, and then they kill their children. So, and not always so consciously. And she may not have even been conscious of it at the time. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. We just think like, oh, we've got to put a stop to this. This can't happen. I need an abortion because it'll change my life. And that's just the way it is. And when society is so just absolutely wicked, people think nothing of it. And it's easy to think nothing of it because it is almost nothing like that, especially when you're talking about early abortion. You're talking about, something that most of the people who are, they don't even perceive the child. It's another thing when you have a live child and you're throwing it off the cliff because you don't want to, because you can't raise it. Or taking unwanted children and sacrificing them to evil gods in order to curry the favor of such things. For some people, people do sacrifice children to this day. In many ways, because they shovel them off to caretakers. I mean, in greater and lesser degrees. I mean, it's like, I do believe that school is a form of child sacrifice. Sorry. It's like you have heard of old times it was said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say it to you, whoever looks upon a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her heart. Okay, right? And I say to you, you've heard it was said you shouldn't sacrifice your children, right? You shouldn't murder your children. Correct. But I say to you also that he who sends his kids to school is slowly murdering them also. You know what I mean? And I know it's, I have to. It's like, okay, I know it's hard. And I don't know what to tell people. I'm just saying that in some way, everyone knows it a little bit. You know why? Because you lose your children little by little every year they're at school. Tell me someone who said, can I hear an amen? Every year they're at school, you lose them a little. Unless you work really hard to keep them. That's why people have trouble with their teenagers. You know how much problem I have with my teenagers? 0 problems. 0. Like, usually my problems with my kids end around 13. They're usually pretty finished up by then they become useful members of the family. Ready to go off on their own and all that stuff, 0 problems. Because that's why you sacrifice your relationship with them in many ways, to be able to do other things, so we can have the things we need. I know that. The world is against us. It's very hard not to sacrifice a little here and there. I'm not trying to come down on anybody by any means, but I'm just saying it is a small, we want to make, you have to be careful. You have to make up for the things, if you send your kids to school, you have to compensate. That's true. I mean, you must compensate as far as in creating a relationship with them, because you're sending them full time into the hands of strangers. We're excited about, right? For our own consumption and stuff. But our children take back. I love my children. I do anything for my children. That, people say that stuff. But I won't provide a husband, a father for their raising. I do anything for my kids. But not stay with stay with him. Whatever. I understand that. It's good to marry well. You should think about that before you have children. You ought to marry, if you don't have children, marry well. And then stick together so your children have 2 parents like they should. And I understand, like, for some people, staying together is like a huge sacrifice because they hate each other. So that's why I always told my kids, be very careful when you get married. Think about it. Especially when you start having kids, because you shouldn't back out of that, except under the gravest circumstances. Because there are exceptions. We should never be divorced, but I mean, do I think it's always a sin, but it's, like a lot of sins, they're more forgivable. But the idol offers sex. The idol offers wealth. The idol offers food, or whatever it is the idol is of. Make me prosper in my business. It'll make me this and that. Even though God promised all those things, these idols are very specific. This is the business. All he cares about is business. You want to have great business, you come to this idol. You want to have great sex, you go to this idol. You want to have a baby with your wife, you go to this idol. The fertility goddess. Make sacrifice to her. Yeah, Yahweh promised if you do all his things in his covenant, but this is a lot easier. She just wants you to sacrifice a child. Oh, for a child, that seems ridiculous. You want to get pregnant, sacrifice that. She just, whatever. They just want you to come here and worship her. Learn about the goddess. And so they would get excited about the idols. What can the idol do for me? Under every tree. Every beautiful place they could find, they just stuck idols. It was like the land was just so full of it. That's probably a bit of a hyperbole, but not under every green tree. But it's a metaphor for being, like a demon behind every bush, an idol under every green tree. It's a metaphor for quite. The idols were quite ubiquitous in Israel. Widespread pretty much everywhere. The children could also be slayed metaphorically. And that's why I was talking about with school. By not giving care for our offspring, we sort of do them in. You know what I mean? By not giving them the love, attention, the education, the information, the knowledge, the things that we should impart to them. If we fail to impart to them what they need, like if a mother does not feed her child, they will die. And there are spiritual things, intellectual things that children must be fed with also. They need interaction with other people. Humans are social creatures. But the kinds of interactions you give them dictate the kinds of people they become. And the kinds of life they're going to lead, not dictate entirely, but influence strongly. You know what I mean? Parents have a very strong influence on their children. They can't always make them do what they want, but what you do to your kids to get them to do what you want them to do definitely affects them, even if it totally fails. Maybe even more so if it totally fails. For example, let's say I want to make my kid, I say, oh, I have a child. He's going to be a great apologist. So I'm going to just cram scriptures down his throat. I'm going to make him memorize stuff. I'm going to teach him all the technical terms. He's going to know what homeostasis is. He's going to be able to talk about transubstantiation. He's going to be able to talk whatever. He's going to have all the big words of doctrine and stuff and be able to rattle them off and tell people everything about the faith and being I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to make him into. And I go about it in such a way that I alienate it. I make him completely alien to that. I ruin it for him, so to speak, by my overbearing, me being overbearing about it. We're not inspiring a love, but rather it becomes about me, what I want you to do, what I want for you, what I say. It's all about me because of my selfishness. Which is really, it's not about God. It's myself. I want a son who's this. He's going to be somebody. He's going to be this, that, the other. By my desires, I'm putting them first. Not considering even what they want. And in that sense, I can drive them away from the Lord. And oftentimes, there are a lot of people who were raised Christian, who end up atheist. I don't know exactly how that happens, but I'll tell you what, that's not what their parents wanted. How they end up with their children spiritually. I don't know the answer to that question, honestly, because it's like, that's at the extreme end. In many cases, though, yes, the things we do with our children affect them, and it affects our relationship with them in the future. And we can infect their relationship with God. Now, the Lord can break through that, of course, by his will. He can, Paul the Apostle didn't have he wanted to destroy the church. He was not exactly in a relationship with the Lord Jesus, But the Lord intervened in his life, and he can intervene in any of our lives. So, I mean, I certainly don't... The reason I talk about it is not like, oh, I'm worried about what's going to happen to the kids so much as far as being raised. If it's a spiritual death, if the parents are spiritually failing their children, that's one thing, because the Lord can, it's another thing when you're actually killing them. Literally, that's why I said in the spiritual sense it's a bit different. But nevertheless, it is something to think about. Because people do sort of cut their kids off. Because while God may intervene in their life at some point in the future, I don't know, do I want to be the one responsible for them turning their back on God? Because that's what I'm saying. It's like on some level, if I'm making it unpalatable to them, the Lord will guide them because they're mine, because they're my children, because he helps me. So then it says, among the smooth stones of the stream is thy portion, they are thy lot. Even to them hast thou poured out a drink offering, thou hast offered a meat offering. Should I receive comfort in these? I remember thinking this had something to do with like the mark upon Cain that had to do with like stones worn smooth as far as over a long period of time. Hold on a second. Let me mute this real quick. But I don't know if that has any application to this. But the smooth stone of the stream. I wonder what they said in... Let's see if there's any hints in another translation. I'm just curious about the NIV. I have an interpretation for that, but... I notice they insert, the idols among the smooth stones of the ravines are your portion. Oh, ravines. Yeah. Well, because the streams often are intermittent, meaning that sometimes they're wet, sometimes they're not. But there are smooth stones down there, right? And lofty and high, and this is going to be the last verse. We're going to stop here at verse 7. Upon a lofty and high mountain hast thou set thy bed, even thither wentest thou up to offer sacrifice. And I think comfort in these refers actually to the children. Meaning the offerings, I think literally means we've poured out all kinds of drink offerings. It's like, should I be comforted in these drink offerings? Meaning that they have religious external behaviors, but they're not to the Lord. Should the Lord, he's saying, you mock me by inflaming yourself with idols, right? I do think, honestly, he's talking about the seed. Should I take comfort in these children? Should I be pleased with your children? Because it's the son he draws them near, right? And they're the ones who are who are laughing at his expense, doing these things, transgressing. And the method is with idols under every green tree and slaying the children in the valleys. And he's saying, so whether it's the drink offering or whether it's the people, obviously if it's taking pleasure in the offering, it also refers to the people ultimately, because if he is not pleased with the offering, he's not pleased with the offerer. It's not that there's anything wrong with the drink per se. The drink might be perfectly fine, but the method of pouring it out is so alien. It's like, it's so ridiculously alien. Like I said, it's a mockery, is what he's saying. You're mocking me with this. Because they do also offer offerings to the Lord. But they are also inflaming themselves with idol and every... and here he transitions, you've set your bed. And it's going to go in the next part talking about the bed and inviting in all these others. And it goes into it, like I said, because the adultery analogy has to do with people turning their backs on God to serve other gods. And like I said, you don't have to have a literal idol, because God is the high, oftentimes they say atheists, they don't believe in God, but they sort of do. Because, and what is meant by that is like, not that they believe God is real, but they act like they think God is real. They act like they think someone's watching when no one's watching. That's the essential nature of belief in God, that you behave yourself even when no other human is around to see you or catch you at your thing, except perhaps yourself. But the fact that you limit yourself, you agree within yourself for whatever reason, whether you think it's rationality or whatever you think it is, it's not rational. But whenever you subject yourself to rules that you put above yourself, I can't do that, I must keep myself from that, and I must this, you're holding yourself under these rules. That's your God. And that thing to which you aspire to, that high and lofty place, like he talks about, that he sets himself. He is the one who inhabits eternity, the high and lofty place. Now, people do aspire to high and lofty goals, but not through God. There are high and lofty mountains where we make up our bed to invite in our lovers, so to speak. Meaning the things we covet, the high things we aspire to, our dreams, our hopes. God is supposed to be our hope and our dream. He is our overlord, the one under whose rules we live. But atheists have some form of God that does the same thing for them. Often, unless they're one of those, like David Wood, talked about as a psychopath, when he considered no God, he tossed all that stuff out. Rules, and that is true. Being a true atheist is to throw out. It's not necessarily to become violent and murder, but to know that you could. You know what I mean? To know that it's perfectly okay. Like says, what's wrong with doing that? Who says who? Why not just go out and kill a bunch of people? What does it matter? That's the that is a truly, there's a blah 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 blah. That's all you believe in. You've got a God over you or something. Well, we can't because there's some sort of God. It's not not a real. They have some shadow remaining of their Christian heritage. Which is why those atheists are like that. What is going on? I don't want to see that. Okay. So anyways, there we go. We're done for today. Sorry we start so late so often, but whatever. At least we're getting the studies in. We'll pick it up with verse 8 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me in the study. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then...
Are not ye children of transgression, a seed of falsehood, inflaming yourselves with idols under every green tree, slaying the children in the valleys and the cliffs of the rocks? Among the smooth stones of the stream is thy portion. They are thy lot, to them hast thou poured out a drink offering, thou hast offered a meat offering. Should I receive comfort in these? Upon a lofty and high mountain hast thou set thy bed.